Okay.
I'm going to show you what the heads of the writing team, the two main heads of the writing team, respectively, are Jason Zimba and William Bill McCullum. And I'm going to show you what they actually said back when Common Core was being written. I think this will be helpful. So to begin with, let's look at Sandy Stotsky questioning Jason Zimba at public testimony in Massachusetts, March 23rd, 1910. So you want to play that?
I believe we have on this. The definition of college readiness, I think it's a fair critique that it's a minimal definition of college readiness.
For some colleges.
Well, for the colleges most kids go to, but not that most parents probably aspire, right?
It's not for STEM. It's not for international.
That's true. It's not only not for STEM, it's also not for selective colleges that, for example, UC Berkeley, even whether you're going to be an engineer or not, you better have pre-calculus to get into UC Berkeley, right?
Engineering colleges.
And that's true. I think the third pathway goes a lot towards that, but your issue is really broader than that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, at this point, what he was doing was talking about the level at which Common Core was being written. And what he just said, and there you have it from the horse's mouth, is that it was written for students intending to go to a community college. It was not written for students that intended to go to any selective university. In particular, right off the bat, what does it do? It throws away the top 30% of our high school graduating classes and says, you don't matter. So that's what we're dealing with. And I'd like to go through, the next thing I'd like to do, we're going to skip a few slides here, because this was designed to actually show it in context, but we couldn't do that.
Oh, okay.
So back it up a couple. So at the end of this, when I had it stop, Jason Zimba had just mentioned the third pathway, and the thing about the third pathway was it was a logical path that would have fixed the entire problems in mathematics with Common Core. It was designed so that it was the third way, and this was for the students in the top 30%, a logical path to calculus, either as a first university course or as a high school senior level course. And so there were these markers in the March version for the third pathway, but they were very, very incomplete. It was just the existence of markers that said, here's what we are going to be putting in. Next slide. And so this is the key stub of the content that they fully intended to put into core standards. I should say that both Jason Zimba and Bill McCullum are capable mathematicians. They actually have their PhDs in mathematics, and they have almost the same standards for high mathematics achievement that I have. So, so this is what they intended to put in as the sort of the summit of what was supposed to be in core standards. And I could live with that. I could live with that. If they could put in those subjects which are the kind of key topics in calculus as the culmination of the mathematics and core standards, then core standards would have been a document that I could have supported. But next slide. But of course, this wasn't the case. And what they did do was they said Algebra 2 will be the highest mathematics that will even be mentioned in Common Core. And what does this give you? In particular, I think that since this was sold to the administration as supplying a pathway to STEM and increasing the STEM outcomes that we're getting like 20,000 engineers a year. That's incredibly low, actually. By contrast, China is getting 500,000 highly competent engineers every year now. We can't compete. And so, so we look at a student whose highest course was Algebra 2, and the student is brighter and ambitious and wants to major in a STEM area. And the actual data shows that of these students whose highest course is Algebra 2 when they enter college, either through the community college or a regular college, and they want to go into STEM, only 2% of them are going to make it. That's 1 in 50. Next slide. And you can't ignore this, because with what we're doing now, 20,000 engineers a year, and then cutting it down by this, you can't ignore it, because that cuts all of our innovation in high tech and everywhere else. And it's going to have huge economic consequences. So here's the actual slide from the National Center for Education Statistics, that arm of the U.S. Department of Education that analyzes all education statistics. And it's reliable and it's consistent with every study. So I emphasize that 2% right there. Okay, next slide. So now the second, I promised you that I would give you both of the lead authors what they had said. Now, I gave you what Jason Zimba said in March. Here is what Bill McCullum said. Now, Bill McCullum is a little more political than Jason. Jason's just straight, honest. And Bill has said different things to different groups at that point. But here's what he said to the national meeting of the American Math Society, the Society of Professional Research Mathematicians in this country in January. And in answer to a question, the level of the document. It's not what we aspire to for our children. It's not what we as a nation want to set as a final deliverable. Next slide. We should go beyond that. We should expect our children to go beyond the level, as the case standards will go beyond the level set by the college and career ready document. What he meant here was that that those stubs I was showing you would be present and filled out. And the stubs had been put in there by these two, and they were going to be filled out into a full detailed description of what students were expected to do to get to calculus. But it didn't happen. Next slide. And the slide after that, because he's... yeah, so at this point he's referring to the next draft, which appears in March. And as I said, that draft would have led to reasonable results, but that didn't happen. Next slide. But as I said now, everything in that slide, everything beyond Algebra 2, every indication of anything beyond what in fact was amounted to about half of what is a current Algebra 2 class, it's all gone. It's just not there. And next slide. And of course, if you stop there, you're in the situation where 2% of the kids who want to go into STEM have any chance of going into STEM. Next slide. In fact, it's worse than that. It's designed, Common Core at that level is simply designed for kids to go to a community college, nothing else. Next slide. And I'll just, these are the last of the slides. How do these expectations work in practice? Well, there's beginning to be data that's coming out now. And I picked New Mexico because I used to live there. And so here's some data from New Mexico that came out within the last couple of months. Again. How do these expectations work in practice? Exactly as predicted. The high school math, the the redesign requirements inadequately prepare students for college-level math. And this is, as I say, this is current data from New Mexico. In 2013, if you look just at those students in New Mexico whose highest school math class was Algebra 2, 77% of them were required to take remedial courses on entry into college. So exactly what you expected if that's where you stop. And so that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. That is the reality of what Common Core is saying. We've thrown away the top 30%. They don't count. We're threatening to cut our STEM from already tiny to a tinier trickle. And it's at this point, this search for equity and all of that stuff that the educators are so fond of is threatening our future economic health, worse than anything else that has happened in at least the last 20 years. And I'll